Right then, thank you very much, Andrew, for joining us this evening. So you're chairman of the Visual Foundation. You've been doing that now for a good couple of months. Do you want to? Are you okay to just give me a bit of a brief intro on who you are, why you got involved with the foundation, and anything else?
Yeah, no, yeah, thank you for having me, I guess, first. It's always good to get involved in some of the initiatives that we're doing as a charity. I'm honoured and proud to be the chairman, and I'm hoping that we're going to really start kicking on now this year and helping more and more people. I think the reason I want to get involved, from my perspective, I guess I'm a key fitness enthusiast. I often take part, or did until COVID and a few other things happened. I used to take part in charitable events, whether they were football tournaments or things along those lines. I even did a few with Visual when we did some events with Greater Manchester Police. So there's been some really good fitness-based charitable events that I've been involved in that I've really enjoyed, and I'm always striving to improve my own fitness and personal health, well-being, those sorts of things. And I feel like a charity and being involved in that is a really good opportunity for me to share my own thoughts and ideals, but also share that ambition and that desire for health and well-being, and use a charity as a vehicle for sharing that with a wider audience. That's kind of why I want to be involved. And I've always been quite heavily invested in Visual and the values of Visual, which is all about making that positive change for people. And I feel like, again, fitness, but also as a foundation, getting involved in the message and the purpose that we've got will help deliver that vision and that kind of approach to a wider audience and really start to have a positive impact on people, and also the people around them, again, which is what you get from some of the fitness and things like that I've been involved in.
Yeah, now more so than ever, really, isn't it? I tell you what, I'm really missing doing some exercise. I'm missing playing tennis, squash, and things like that. But nothing beats getting out with the dog in my eyes and stretching the legs.
Yeah, well, you live in a nice part of the country though, where you can go to the beach and stuff. So it's even better for you. I think for me, it's a good point actually. One of the things I've done to keep saying is, because in a remote working kind of situation, most people will find that you go from bed to your desk, and that's it's not good for people's mental health. So you need to have that break, I think. So I purposefully, even if I have to get up at 5:30 in the morning, I will force myself to go for a walk in the morning before work. Or I'm fortunate that I've built kind of a mini gym in my summer house, so I've got like a few bits of equipment. So I tend to either go for a workout or go for a walk before work. It makes a massive amount of difference to how productive I am, but also kind of how mentally stimulated I am to come to work. I think before I started to do that, I found that I was starting to lack motivation. I'd sit at my desk to work and I just wouldn't want to be there, and having that split and having that kind of breaking point where I go away, even a virtual commute type thing that some organisations like Microsoft are pushing, that sort of idea, I think is really powerful. And I've used that now to really help my own mental health. I think it's something that a lot of people can start to do themselves and to pick up from.
Yeah, that's good. So so obviously the Careers Club, our ambition and our goal as a foundation is to support and help people either who are looking for work or looking maybe at a career change. We're more than happy to help people of all ages who are looking for work. Would you like to touch, perhaps, Andrew Hutch, sorry, if you could perhaps tell me a little bit about how you've historically approached applying for jobs, for work?
Yeah, okay. I can't say it's going to be the most interesting thing. I think I've always been quite good at searching and applying for jobs. I've kind of known roughly what I wanted to do for a while, and I was fortunate enough to fall into a kind of skill set that was quite widely wanted, which was useful. But I've never been out of work since I was 18, so again, I've been really fortunate in that regard. When it comes to approach or applying for jobs or even looking for jobs, I've done everything. I've used job search engines, I've used agencies, even social media, not just LinkedIn, but I've used social media to put the word out that I'm looking for work. And I've been fortunate again to have friends as well that have worked somewhere, and I've always asked them, is there any opportunities around? Key thing for me really is it's about being a bit more innovative, I suppose. So rather than relying on a job search engine, rather than relying on LinkedIn, rather than relying on agencies, starting to think about not just what you want to do for work, but who you want to work for, what people are looking for in the industry, and then applying yourself in that way. So, if you're going to go for a job as a developer or a designer, you're going to approach the type of market in a different way to how you would go for a job if you're a project manager, for example. So again, I've always looked for the job that I want, and then when I've not been able to find a job that I really like, I've done an interim type of job. So I actually worked at Lidl once. I did 2 days at Lidl where I did all the things you'd imagine: swept the floors, stacked the shelves. Did that for 2 days. And then suddenly a job offer for something I really wanted came in, and within 2 days it was at that job. So even when I've been in jobs before, I've been looking. But again, never been out of work since 18. Always been quite fortunate that I've knew where I wanted to go, and I've kind of had a good idea of what my trajectory was.
Yeah,
that's kind of been my approach all along.
Yeah, I mean, I like that little anecdote about Lidl, because I think you, in whatever role, even if you're looking to explore, a career elsewhere in a different sector, a different role, you can learn a lot from any role that you're in, and you can take the positives and the negatives from any role and apply that to your next job, which I always think is really important. One of the things that I was involved in setting up a careers club in the last recession, and one of the things that somebody said to me was they always make a point of keeping their CV up to date. Not necessarily updating it every week, but maybe once every few months, looking at it, because your experience that you're currently experiencing in your current role, it's fresh in your mind, and you might want to make a note and highlight some of those key attributes that you've been developing over the last couple of months. So in terms of your CV then, Hutch, is there anything that you've done specifically to make your CV and covering letters stand out?
That is a good question. So I think first and foremost, I'm quite graphically and visually minded. I like things that are aesthetically pleasing. I don't tend to do the basics. So I think there's loads of search engines you can go on, and you can get a template CV quite easily, and it will have the basics in it. But I feel like your CV needs to look good. It needs to be quite clean and quite clear and concise. I think if anybody that's got a CV that's 4 pages long, that's probably overkill. But I also feel like your CV should be a reflection of you at the time, though. So you don't want. I've been fortunate to actually employ people now. So I've seen lots of CVs. I've done interviews with people, and obviously I've been an interviewee. If you use a 3-year-old CV, I think it shows. So back to your point about keeping relevant, your CV needs to be a reflection of you at the time. So if for example, I've always looked to tweak my CV with the job I'm applying for as well, and the person that's reading it. So not only do I want to think about what role I'm applying for and how my CV should represent how I fit with that role, I also think about the person that's going to read that CV. If I'm applying for a position and the person that's reading my CV is a director, he's not going to have the time to read all 3 pages. I need to get my message across, and I need to grab his attention in the first line. So I contemplate and think about how and who is reading it, and I also look them up as well. So if I'm going to be interviewed by somebody, I need to make sure. So I'll check LinkedIn, or I'll look for articles and things like that about them, because I want to see if we've got any common connections, if we've got common interests, or even a common history. Maybe we've worked at the same organisation, or maybe they've consulted into an organisation that I've worked in before. And that's information that I can use, and that's insight that I can use to build some rapport with that person. they're all things that I consider when I'm doing CVs and covering letters. I mean, I went through a period of applying for a range of different jobs, all within the same industry, but on a real spectrum. And whether I was successful or not, I actually purposefully asked for feedback on my CV. And 9 times out of 10, you're not going to get anything. You're not going to get any nuggets of wisdom 9 times out of 10. But on the odd occasion, you're going to get some real good insight about what you should do to improve your CV. Another thing I've done in the past is sent my CVs to agencies and asked them to help, and they'll always tweak it into a format that fits them in the way they use them. But you're going to get some good insight about what your CV should provide and what it should say. And if you've got some colleagues or friends that have been in good jobs, so another reason I'm quite fortunate, my mum actually has worked for government. She's also worked in some quite high profile roles. She's also done jobs that I've since done in the past, so she's really helped me with the CV, just getting the basics right. She's very good with grammar, so again, getting the right context and the right words and things like that is really important. But I think if I think about the reality of today, there's so much good content out there, and there's great advice from people on what should and shouldn't be included in CVs. I probably think I've learned the hard way, to be honest, because again, it's more trial and error now. But there's a lot of good stuff out there that you can start to harness for your own benefit. But simple things like having a description or a personal statement that really grabs the reader's attention, that's so important. Making sure you call out your area of expertise. So again, thinking about what role you're going for. I think it's also important to provide key successes, and again, things that are going to really grab that attention in your first intro. Kind of your opening statement almost needs to grab the reader's attention. Again, thinking about who the audience is, and that could be something as simple as a large project that you've worked on that's been delivered really successfly. Maybe there's something that's garnered national attention that you've been involved in. Make sure that's front and center, because they're things that people can relate to. And then, I'd even go into detail on work experience. Obviously, the standard approach is work experience. It's reverse chronological order. You're talking about name, location, but I would even add the website. Have you done some work that's been a case study for somebody that's been really widely received? Maybe you've worked on an application that's maybe got mobile app of the year, or maybe you've worked on a website that's had design of the year. All that sort of stuff is so relevant, but it's dependent on the role you're going for. And then finally, if I think about where I've been engaged with quite recently is the UK public sector, for example, is adopting the skills for the information age, so Sophia. I've even included that. So in my current CV, I refer back to not just experience that's relevant to the role that I'm doing, but also to the skills and the level of responsibility that Sophia sell. So when I talk to a public sector organisation, they're going to understand Sophia really well. So I'm going to say, well, these are the Sophia skills I've got, and here's the evidence of those skills, and this is where I've used those skills or I've applied those skills. I think that's really important as well. So there are other things that I would consider when I'm contemplating my CV or my covering letter.
Yeah, no, that's really useful information there. Good advice there. I think some of the things that I took from what you were just saying there, which stood out for me, was recruitment agencies. I think, whether you're looking for part-time, full-time, something that maybe even just temporary. My wife, as an example, she got made redundant. She took out. She went to a temporary recruitment agency that specialises in just temporary roles, and she ended up working at a particular company for about 5 weeks. And in the end, they actually said they were going to make the job offer, make the role a permanent role. But she was there in post, and they said, would you be interested in doing it? So it's a good way of getting a foot in the door potentially as well, going down that route.
Yeah, I don't think many people. I suppose people that go on to higher education maybe, but there's a lot of people that enter their kind of working lives not really knowing what they want to do. And whilst I had a good inkling of what I wanted to do, I've always grown up around IT. My mum worked in IT for so many years, so I had the kind of homeschooling around IT, I suppose. I learned through seeing my mum work, but also what she taught me. So that helped me understand that IT was a good route for me to go into. I actually did art. All I did throughout school and higher education, or not even higher education, but when I went to college or sixth form, that was all art based and media based. So I was always going down a different route. The reality is, I couldn't find a job that fitted at the time. I was good with IT, so I thought, well, I'll start there. I took a job in an area that I hadn't really been skilled in or schooled in up until that point, and then loved it. So, I've been in IT now, like I say, since I was 19, with a short 2-day period in between where I was at Lidl. But you're right, you've got to sometimes take an opportunity in an area before you know that it's right for you. And I think what we're seeing now is lots of people testing lots of different roles. You have to almost test a lot before you know what you like. It's like food. You don't know that you like lots of different foods unless you test lots of different foods. It can be the same for work. And using an agency is a good way to get into lots of different industries and to test lots of different things or taste lots of different things.
Yeah. And then the other thing that I put at the end of my CV very deliberately is just, some interest that I've got. So, for example, I love traveling. So I don't necessarily just say that I love traveling. I put like, the most recent, most interesting destination that I've been to. Or the fact that my dog's got 3 legs, but she's like my world. So I put funny little anecdotes like that in there. But it's just something, because organisations get so many applications. You've just got to do something to stand out from the crowd and become become memorable.
Yeah, and that's why, just back to that point, that's why I said that, kind of touch on the point, your CV and your covering letter should be a reflection of you, and it should be personal. There's too many, I've read so many CVs that it's probably not a topic for now, but there's things around bias around, CVs and bias around recruitment that's still around today, and there's things that we can get around, and we can talk about that probably at length. But the reality is, the more personal your CV is and the more accurate it is to who you are, the more likely you are to hit a tone, set a tone, but also to kind of hit home with people when they're reading your CV. If you come across in a personal way, the likelihood is you are going to kind of match up to some of the people you're talking to. They're going to potentially share interests and hobbies. You're going to have something to talk about, and that's why I also went to look at the person that was going to be interviewing me, so that I could find that common ground, because that's the way that you're really going to stand out from the crowd, like you say.
Yeah. And then, so assuming you get the CV in, they like the look of your CV, then, inevitably you've got the dreaded interview stage. What have you done in preparation for previous interviews then?
So I guess the key thing, I think this is key for even when you've got a job, is research. I think research is so important. So not just in regards to knowledge about the role that you're applying for in the company, and what's required from that role and from that company, but I've even gone as far as to use those. There's websites that you can go to where you can look at like historic versions of certain websites, for example. I've gone to that length where I've looked at what a company's website's gone through and how that company's evolved over a 2-3 year period, because that will give me some unrivaled insight into that organization. If I understand the journey they've gone on, maybe they can understand my journey, and I can find some correlations. So when I'm answering their questions in the interview, I can actually tie it back to my experience that might tie back to their experience. If someone's been with a company for 4 years, they'll have been through the peaks and troughs, they'll have been on that journey. If I can express how I've gone on something similar, there's some common ground that we can kind of we can talk about. Maybe we can start to, the worst thing about an interview, from my perspective, is if they're too formal. If you can find that common ground and you can start to break some ice, that's actually a really good thing to try and do. And that's what I will always try to do when I'm preparing for an interview, is try and think what that common ground might be. I think before I got to the stage where I've ever employed someone before, for example, I used to get a list of standard questions. I'm thinking Well, I get a list of standard questions and I'd practice my answers. But again, I'd make them specific to that organisation or that industry or even the person that I'm talking to. I try to do that with those kind of standard questions. So, for example, a question like, I'm racking my brains for a good one. So, give an example of where you faced a challenge and then describe how you overcame it. So that's quite a common or a standard question you might get asked. So if you're applying for a role as a project manager, you're not going to talk about the time that you worked on the service desk and you fixed a high priority incident. You're just not going to do it. You're going to talk about that project that you managed during COVID, where you've had to shift an entire team to remote working for the first time, but you've still been able to deliver it on time and within budget. And you're also including in that all of the other challenges that you faced along the way. That's how you're going to answer the question. So again, you know, you're shaping the here and now and the role that you're applying for to how you answer your questions. And I think the other thing with preparing for an interview is I'm quite meticulous. I don't know if that's coming across now, but I'm quite meticulous. So I actually like to dry run interviews. So friends or family, or maybe you've got a friend that works in a higher position than you, or even you might even know somebody that works there, having a conversation with them about that organization, what to expect. Maybe they know the person that's going to interview you, you know, using all the information to your advantage. We're in the information age. It's really easy. It might sound and feel difficult, but sometimes you just can't see for the wood for the trees. I've gone through a stage where I was really, I used to get stage fright. So I got stage fright in exams, I got stage fright in interviews, and you know, practice makes perfect. Understanding you and understanding your content is imperative to be able to kind of break through those troubling times, those challenges. And like I say, the more meticulous you are, the more you understand you and what you offer, the more you understand your own story, and the more capable you are of recalling that information, the more likely you are to have success in the interview, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think you know, feedback it genuinely is a gift, and you know, I think, you know, I always think presenting in front of family members and peers is always the hardest thing to do. You know, it's so much easier presenting in front of strangers, but being prepared and taking on board feedback constructively, and then, you know, tweaking your presentation, it's invaluable, and it'll set you up to deliver hopefully a more relaxed interview, and hopefully, yeah, that it gives the interviewees you know, an opportunity to see the personality shine through a little bit more. You know, I've met and interviewed a couple of people who have clearly come unprepared, which then manifests itself into nerves taking over and things like that. So yeah, I think some really good points there, Hutch. And then I suppose, you know, I've just mentioned there that I've witnessed a few horrible experiences. I've got my own horror stories myself. I suppose, have you had any horrible experiences that you've subsequently managed to turn into some really positive experiences?
Yeah, the nuance on the end of that question makes it a difficult one. So horrible experiences, a few, definitely. Ones that have turned out positive. Yeah, okay. So I was in work already. I had an okay job. I was happy with it, but I think my concern with the role was the development path. I just didn't feel like there was anywhere to go working for that organisation. They were quite small, and there was already people in the, you know, the logical next step for me. There was already people that filled those roles that, you know, they'd been there 20 years. They weren't going anywhere. So I kind of felt, right, well, now's the right time for me to look for something new. I remember I had my CV with an agency. I'd sent them a fresh, updated CV, not expecting to get anything. Within 2 days, they were like, "Oh, here's an opportunity that fits with your CV." So they sent me this opportunity. I looked it through and I was like, "Well, yeah, why not? I'll go for that." And then within a day of me saying, "Yeah, I'd be quite up for that," they said, "Oh, can you do an interview?" And I was like, "Yeah, when is it?" And they were like, "Oh, it's in, you know, 2 days' time." So I'd gone from an idea that I was going to look for something new to suddenly getting an interview within 3 or 4 days. And then so I got the details. I was going for this interview, and then turns out on the day of the interview, that the address I was given was the wrong address. So I've turned up to an office to be interviewed, and I'm told by the lady on reception that the person that I'm there to be interviewed by works at a different office in a different city, and it was like 50 miles away. So rather than, how things turned out, so this is where the positive experience came in. Rather than them turn me away, what actually transpired was the opportunity I was applying for, and the head of that whole department happened to be in the office I was in. So it turns out the head of that entire department, rather than this team lead that I was going to be interviewed by, decided that he would interview me. And whilst he wasn't prepared at all, on the spot, but what transpired was that we actually had this really good conversation, and it was really much more informal. He was, 2 kind of tiers above the person that should have been interviewing me, so he had a different perspective entirely. And I got so much insight and actionable intel from him about what I should be doing, what the role needs to be able to deliver that fitted with what the organizational objectives were, which is completely different to what you might get when you're just focusing on what the job needs to do. He was telling me things about not just what the job needs to do, but how that job contributed to the wider success of that department, but also the wider success of the business. I used that information, and we set up a phone interview with the actual team leader for the day after. And I used all that information to not just get the job, but then actually excel within that job as well. So that was invaluable, and that was a really good experience. And then what's even better is that whilst I've since moved on from that organisation, I'm actually still good friends with the guy that leads that department. Obviously, he's moved on as well, and we keep in touch, and we're still friends to this day. So that's what could have been a really negative experience that actually worked out in my favour in the end.
Yeah, sounds great. And it's what good on you as well. And I think as well, networks are really important. And that particular individual who obviously took the time to speak to you, that's that reflects very well on him as an individual. And I guess great that you've remained friends. But I suppose if you're interviewing somebody else in the future and they turn up at the wrong place, I suppose you're going to remember how somebody treated you, and that all helps. So I suppose these are tough times. There's no doubt about it. Competition for jobs is unbelievably fierce. It's unbelievably fierce at all times, but none more so than today, I guess. I suppose motivation can be really hard, especially when you're applying for jobs day in, day out. I know when I was a graduate, an undergraduate, and I was applying for graduate jobs and going for graduate roles, and kind of being seen at an initial interview stage, or getting through to the sort of final 1 or 2 places to then get rejection as well was quite difficult to take. Have you got any tips that you apply to yourself to keep yourself motivated that people listening into this might take inspiration from, Hutch?
Well, I think the first thing I'll say before I answer the question is, whilst it is a challenging time, now is probably one of the only times in history where it really doesn't matter where you live to where you work. I think that's really positive. I think people can start to think more about who they want to work for rather than where they want to work, which is a complete dynamic. So whilst, yes, competition for jobs is a lot higher, it actually means that you can apply for a job now in practically a different country and still deliver it from home, which is a positive that you would have never had before. So, we talked about my friend there that helped me and I'm still friends with. I could technically, he could probably offer me a job now, and he works in Germany, but I could still deliver it from the UK. There's opportunity. It's not just competition that's abundant, but opportunity is abundant now. You can literally work from anywhere for anyone, pretty much. I mean, obviously, you've got to rely on some organisations being technically advanced enough to do that, but the nature of it is there is some hope there for people that maybe feel that competition is really difficult where they live or where they want to work. They can start to think about, not where they want to work, but who they want to work for, and still deliver it from home. I think that's a really positive kind of slant on that challenge. So the question was tips to keep motivated, wasn't it? So
it was, yeah. But that was good guidance there, I think, Coach. And that was motivational in itself.
That was kind of where I was going with it. Yeah. So I think you're right though. Motivation is difficult. I don't think people should be ashamed. I don't think people should shy away from that feeling of being unmotivated at times. It doesn't just happen when you're applying for a job. It happens when you're in a job. It could be just the weather. Changing the seasons does have that impact on people. You could be burnt out with work. You might be dealing with a difficult situation at home. There's lots of people that are going through that with what's happening with COVID, and I feel for those people, and I feel for people that are out of jobs. And that's one of the reasons why I'm driving the foundation, and you're helping me with the Careers Club. One of the things we're trying to do is to bring that motivation to help people get back into work. And I've always found that personally, as I touched on at the start, really staying motivated, you just need to take a step back. Take a step back, really think about what you're trying to achieve, not just with work, but also with life. And how is your job either contributing to that or detracting from it? And how are your actions helping you do those things? How are your actions helping you get towards what you're trying to achieve? Sometimes, like I had with this job where I didn't see progression, sometimes doing that step back and understanding that your job isn't helping you to get what you achieve is the kick that you need to go and apply for something new. Or maybe is the trigger that you need to go and speak to your boss to say, well, actually, this isn't working for me. I need to do something different. Maybe you want to take a sideways step into the business. Maybe you've taken a job on that you don't actually enjoy anymore. Maybe you've taken on management responsibilities you don't want. Maybe if you just take that step back and understand that that's a problem, you can speak to your manager and maybe move within the organization. Maybe that's the step you need to take. But then, outside of the work environment, for me, fresh air is critical. Regular exercise. If you can't do it daily, even a small walk, 10-15 minute walk, whilst it's not optimal, that's better than sitting at your desk. It's better than going from bed to desk. So that's key for me. If you can introduce a virtual commute, so when they start to relieve some of these restrictions, maybe you still have a home office job. Maybe your organisation decides that actually remote working is the way we want to move going forward. But maybe you can go into the office 1 or 2 days a week, or 1 day, 2 days a month. Maybe that's good. But a virtual commute is a really good idea. Get in your car, go for a little drive, go out, go for a walk. Maybe you're fortunate to have some fitness equipment. Just do some exercise before you start work. That's really, really helped me in my mental health, and it helps me keep motivated as well. I find that all those positive endorphins I get from a workout mean that when I start my day at work, after I've had a workout, I've sat away from my desk and had my breakfast, I've had a drink in the morning, maybe I've read a bit of news, whatever it is that you like to do, get all that out of the way, and then make sure that you start work really, really motivated. And also, I would say keeping motivated is about only doing the things you need to do while you're at work. So if you stay focused for those 5, 6, 8 hours that you're at work and don't do things that detract from getting your job done, and then have that real good clean break from work and then your home life, that will help with motivation as well. I had that problem, and I've done that. So whilst we're recording this a bit later than usual, the reality is this morning I didn't start work till 8. I went for a workout in the morning. I had my breakfast. I actually watched Sky Sports News this morning for the first time in a while. Then I started work at 8 o'clock. I've made time, so I've used focus time in my calendar. So I've set an hour aside where I can't be distracted. I now add all of my lunch hours to my calendar as well. That's massively helped because it forces me to take that time out. That's really helped again with keeping motivated. And if I think about motivation when I'm applying for a job, the motivation of wanting a job alone is enough for me. It might be that maybe you want to change your role. That's good motivation. And yeah, really, it's maybe look at the people around you. Social media can be a good tool for that sometimes. Looking what other people are doing and seeing how they're progressing. I'm fortunate that I've got a friend circle that are all really, really push each other to progress. I've got some friends that are way more successful than me, which does help. And also, building rapport with your colleagues and building that relationship with your colleagues that are also successful is another good way to help build that momentum, I think, and build that motivation.
Yeah, I think you know, remaining positive and positive with others is really important. I think, you know, too often people can tend to bottle up their frustrations. And I think it's important for people to talk, and you know, you're not, if you are looking for work currently, you're not the only person doing so, and support is available from people like us here at the Visual Foundation. Or, you know, if we can't help you, we can certainly signpost you in the direction of others who potentially are a better place to support you. So, you know, I really enjoyed that, Hutch. Thank you very much for tonight. I think it was good insight, some great guidance in there. I learned a little bit about yourself as well, which I enjoyed. And hopefully we can sign you up for another one, if that's all right.
Yeah, I'm all for it. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. And yeah, if there's anybody out there that wants to get involved and wants some help, we're there's a lot of us here that are open to helping you. So yeah, thank you again.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Hutch.